We appear to be good.
Excellent.
Please feel free to go ahead.
Welcome to the meeting, Mr. Perry. Thank you everybody for being here today. And I'll open the meeting with apologies. We have Councillor Nikki Davis and Councillor Abel Kramer. Can I have a mover for those? Thank you, Councillor Ludlow, and welcome to the committee. And
Thank you.
Seconded by Mia Tong. We'll move on to the minutes of the meeting held 19th of March 2020. Have a mover there, an accurate reflection or any comments on the matter? No. Can I have a mover then for that? To receive the minutes. Thank you, Mia Tong, and seconded by Councillor Bolger. And we will move into the COVID-19 response for solid waste services. And I assume that Jane will take us through that report if everyone has read it, outlining the response. In particular, I'd like to note that it has in there that we would like to thank AB Lime, Bond Contracts and Southern Disability Enterprises through this time, and the other Southern commercial waste operators that have continued to operate well through this for our community throughout all the alert levels. But I'd like to point that out publicly. But Jane, would you like to comment on your report here?
Look, what I'd like to say, and probably on behalf of Matt and I, who both have our name to this report, is that that was a snapshot then. In actual fact, Donna and Ian are probably far better prepared or equipped to not only answer we can answer questions on this report, but provide a wee bit of an update. I don't know what you think, Matt, but I think they would, rather than me just going through something which is everybody's read and it's actually history now, although it sets the scene, I think, for what's happening. Perhaps that might be a more efficient way of bringing the Waste Advisory Group up to speed.
Sure thing. It has your name at the top, but we'll lead on with Matt or Donna. If either one of you would like to give us an update of where we're at now. Heading into level 2. Sure, Donna.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Jane. So yes, so we're heading into level 2 tomorrow. So we've been fortunate that waste is an essential service. So we've been operating right through all of the levels at different extents. Obviously, level 4 was the hardest, where we closed all of the transfer stations with the exception of a few. To allow commercial operators to still be servicing the essential services, such as the hospitals and pharmacies and supermarkets. Level 3 saw us opening up transfer stations under new safety protocols and restricted hours, and bringing the public in. The first number of days at those sites were quite full on, and we appreciate the extra effort from the Gore District Council with more staff at their facility, and extra staff from Bond Contracts to make sure that the wait times for the public were not too much. And we'd also like to thank the public for their patience. I understand that the Invercargill transfer station had a good hour and a half queues at some point over those initial first 4 days. With level 2, we're seeing the transfer stations moving to their normal operating hours, and the only things that are going to be remaining closed will be the Matara skip bin site and the Invercargill recycling drop-off centre. Everything else will be scheduled to open. Curbside recycling collections have been continuing as per normal, with the exception that from the 25th of March to the 10th of May, the recycling had to go to landfill, as we weren't able to process it under those levels 4 and 3. And and it wasn't safe to stockpile the product either. We just couldn't cope with that capacity of stockpiling if we were operating now. Ian, did you have anything else that we've missed off on that?
No, I think that's sort of covered it quite very well, very thorough. Yeah, as of Monday, Saturn Enterprises have been receiving recycling again. And one of the comments from Hamish McMurdo was that the quality of the recyclables is almost pristine coming in from some of the collection rooms, which is quite the opposite of what we were expecting, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's very positive to hear. I think again the messages got out there around about the swapping back to the manual sorting again, and hopefully that has fed through, and long may that continue.
That's great news. I was tentatively nervous about reverting back to our bylaw, our solid waste bylaw, having that reinstated and no longer accepting the green waste in there, in particular. Councillor Ludlow.
Thanks, Alex. Look, I think the messaging that WasteNet were putting out, reminding people that the recyclables were being handled by people at SDE was really useful. Even though we've known that for a while, it's one of those things that people need to be reminded of frequently. I guess, you know, anecdotally, maybe the other reason is they've had more time to go and rinse their recyclables. But there was, I know from a media perspective, there was really good, clear messaging that came out as well. So hopefully that's played a part in a good outcome. Thank you.
Absolutely. And anybody else have any questions or comments around the report? No? Well, thank you very much for giving us the update, and I'll have a mover for the report to be received. Thank you, Councillor Ludlow. And a seconder. Thank you, Mayor Tong. All those in favour? I'm seeing some nods and some hands, so I'm going to assume that that was then carried. Thank you. Next time I'll put a motion. Can I just have a bit more of an obvious wave from those on the committee, just so that we can make sure that I am getting everybody. Next, we'll move on to the waste plan review update. The recommendation here is that the report be received, but I'm sure that someone will want to give us a little bit of an overview. But they'd like to take themselves off mute. Yep, thank you, Jane.
Maybe what I'd like to draw attention to, and I'm just getting it up on my screen, so apologies for a wee bit of a delay here. What I'd like to draw your attention to is the fact that we didn't get our payment for the waste levy. And we have covered that in here and included a letter we got. We spent, and the we was at Claire's level, talking to her same level in MFE, really putting our case that we had kept MFE abreast of how we were progressing the review here, and we thought it was very unjust that suddenly they wouldn't pay. To date, we've had no response, and I recall briefing our councillors in an informal session that we probably shouldn't hold out our hopes, but I think this committee should be aware of what has happened, how we're dealing with it, and just re-emphasising to the committee that we do have plans underway to get this waste assessment done, and we'll certainly not be putting our next payment at risk. And I think other than that, unless either Matt or some of the Ian or Donna have anything to add, we should possibly take questions.
Yep. Mr. Perry?
Yes, I can just report further to the discussions that Claire Hadley and Jane had with the Ministry for the Environment. I also had similar discussions post Claire and Jane's discussions with the same person, and double down on the emails that MFE had sent to Invercargill City Council staff, where there was a clear intention about timetabling, and at no time did the MFE staff person alert us to an impending legislative obligation of breach. And on that basis, I left it with the Deputy Secretary that he should consider an ex gratia payment of 50%, recognising that there obviously is some responsibility for us, but they are in this donkey deep in terms of failing to alert us to the deadline when we're timetabling with them, and they gave their tacit blessing as to what we were doing. So I've left it with him for his consideration, and I don't think we should let this lie idle, because they have a duty of good faith to alert us to any course of action that may involve not meeting our statutory obligations, and they didn't do so.
Yeah, you're quite right there. They've certainly just left us in the lurch. Any further comments or questions?
I think Mr. Perry summed it up pretty well, and thank you to Mrs. Hadley for following this through too. It's all in black and white. It's been well recorded. Keep at it. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, with that closing comment, I'll move that the report be received. Can I have a seconder for that? Thank you. Mayor Tong. All those in favour, raise your right hand. Thank you. That's unanimous and carried. Moving on to standardising curbside collections report. This is your report, Ian. The recommendation is that the report be received as well. Would you like to give us a bit of background on this particular item?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So the report is really just outlining work that has been underway around the development of a series of standardization of recycling in curbside collection, and that's both in terms of what can and can't be put into the collection, as well as how those materials should be presented. The project itself is driven by the Ministry, MFE, who have engaged the Waste Management Institute in New Zealand to actually undertake the research. So as the report indicates, it's a 4-stage project. The first stage being basically industry review into best practice and what happens across in other countries, nationally and internationally. The second stage involves a series of engagement through 11 national hui. As the report indicates, the Otago Southland hui was held about 2 weeks ago now. And in that was attendance from all of the Otago Southland TLAs, as well as the major contractors within the waste management sector. That included representatives from Bond and Southland Disability Enterprises. And the hui also included and was led by representatives from Wastemains and from the Ministry. So the report, the hui also presented the findings from a project team that was looking at what basically they saw as best practice around what can and can't be recycled, and how that should be presented, as I say, largely because different authorities are accepting different products and under different conditions. So some authorities accept squash plastic bottles, others accept whole plastic bottles. Some debate around about having lids on bottles as opposed to lids off bottles because it's a different grade of plastic and has the potential to contaminate the stream. So the report indicates the proposed products to be accepted and the nature and the way that they should be presented. So some of the other common themes that came out of the day were there's a fair bit of debate around about commingled waste and the advantages and disadvantages of that service. Another common theme came out around the general consensus was that moving forward, removal of glass from the waste stream is probably now considered best practice. And certainly that's the preference of the MRF operators. And if you look at the MRFs closest to the next closest MRFs in Queenstown and Invercargill, they all operate glass out operations.
It's all very interesting. What's likely to, obviously you've noted there with that a proposed collection method could be up to 5 bins. What's likely to happen there, like if you're standardizing it throughout the country, and then we've got 5 different bins, who will be responsible for rolling those bins out? Will that mean that we have to change all of the collection services throughout the country? Like, what does it mean for us regionally?
I'd say at this stage, Madam Chairman, these are only guidelines. I don't know that there's going to be any push to mandate that change.
Yeah.
Certainly from a certain point of view, the report notes that number, but again, the practicalities of having that number of separate containers may not be practical. There was other debate as well around about issues about the collection and sorting at a MRF as opposed to sorting at the curbside. With a general consensus that amongst certainly the contractors that some of the health and safety implications of curbside sorting would probably outweigh any benefit. A really good example is the curbside sorting in rural areas on stretches of 100-kilometre-per-hour roads, which would prove to be rather difficult. Yeah. So those were some of the common themes that came out. As I say, the report indicates a timeline to 30th of June to present a final report. After which time I think we will have an opportunity to consider that report and consider any changes to levels of service that may arise as we move forward, noting that anything that we do in terms of changing our current levels of service is likely to require further consultation.
For sure. Well, thanks for bringing us to our attention. It's good to see that this is happening nationally. Councillor Ludlow, did you have a question? No? Did anyone else have any other questions or comments? No? Then can I have a move that this report be received? Please. Thank you, Councillor Ludlow. And seconder, I'm going to pick on people. Thank you, Councillor Bolger. All those in favour, raise your right hand. Carried. Thank you. And that is the end of our public meeting. Can I have a mover that we go into public excluded? Thank you,
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mayor Tong, and seconded by Councillor Bolger. All those in favour, raise your right hand. Thank you. We will have a small